Yo guys, Vision's Gen here, back with some more Call of Duty Zombies content, with today's episode being around Ashes of the Damned, arguably the best first map we've had on launch in recent years, or perhaps even all time, with an incredible map layout and POIs, as well as a very challenging map to survive in itself, with the fog, the Zersa bears, uber class enemies, a difficult Easter egg to say the least, which is both challenging all the way throughout, and an even harder boss fight in itself. This is episode 22 of the Zombie series, with all of the previous episodes on the channel, linked in the description below. So on that note, stay tuned and let's get right into it. So first things first, just before we get into the video, I always like to kick these episodes off with a bit of an overview, or I guess structure, and I guess also an important part to say that this is not an Easter egg guide by any means, although the absolute requirement in order for me to upload these episodes is that I have to have completed the Easter egg if it is applicable and available on any of these maps in this series. And of course for Ashes of the Damned, it has an incredibly challenging Easter egg, which we'll go over in more detail at the end. But just to remind you guys, this is not a guide, purely my reflections, thoughts, and any tips and tricks I guess along the way in this video in my experiences with playing this game. Initially, getting any gameplay underway with Zombies, I played it as soon as the game came out. I got to level 12, I think it was, on Public Matches multiplayer with my friends, and I came right over to Zombies on day one, and I fell in love. Now for me, I didn't actually go for the Easter egg on the day one, or even up until the first month or so. I actually went for the Master Camo, the Infestation, and that journey was an incredible experience as well. I've got a whole video which is linked in the description below, which went over all of the details on how to get the Master Camo in this game, in case you guys are interested. But that journey was incredible, and it taught me so much about this map. I learned how to do some of the starting parts of the Easter egg, because every time I was trying to do the camo grind, if at any point I could try multitask to do the sort of Easter egg in itself, I was trying it, and I did get to the Wonder Weapon step a few times, but I never went beyond that point of getting the keys and so on. And I said we will go over that Easter egg in more detail, just summarizing my journey, my experience, and also any maybe tips and tricks that you guys maybe hadn't considered. If you're watching this video for the first time, it could maybe help you guys with learning this map a bit better as well. With regards to the POIs, any of the points of interest on this map, it has several, which I think makes this a really unique experience, making it almost like it's not been played before, even if you've played it multiple times. The spawn area being my least favorite, the Janus Towers Plaza, with such little going on, I would just say this is the area I spent the least amount of time on this map. The farm is always good fun, it just brings back those memories, just like Exit 115, or of course the diner, which is also what it was known as back in the day. A memorable yet familiar area. The Cosmodrome and the lake, I spent pretty much most of my time in these areas camo grinding, and the Ashwood is also very cool in its area in itself, reminding me a little bit of Transit and Buried combined into one sort of map, and I love all of this map. I think it has so much incredible detail and character, with the theme having a great combination of visual elements that both improve the experience, as well as almost being intimidating with the likes of the fog and the elite bosses in this map. I'd say it's more difficult, or at least on the difficult side of a map in itself, with various unique areas that made the map what it is, creative, entertaining, with each playthrough feeling slightly different each time, as I said, with it being so unique and all of their POIs. Now the Easter egg in itself and the boss on this map are both very challenging, but thoroughly detailed and of course entertaining. It depends on what side of the spectrum you're on. I was a bit sort of controversial with my opinion at first with how I found this map in terms of an Easter egg point of view, but we'll get into that in a second. I just think it's worth touching on in terms of how this map is ranked, because there's so many different categories you can try and decide or dictate how a map is ranked in itself, whether you're going for high round, playing for an Easter egg, the wonder weapon, the character and theme of the map, how big the map is, whatever it may be. There's so many categories, and I think this one ticks a lot of those boxes. I'd say for the best, it's probably the best first map we've had in recent years. I'd say it's arguably better than all of them since Black Ops 4. It's always, and obviously debatable of course, but Terminus last year was always the one that was going to sort of toss up between this and that, and I still think I'm probably leaning towards Terminus. So I guess it doesn't really matter where this map ranks. It's more so that it's in good company. It's a great map, and I'd put it as a strong B tier map, maybe even potentially A tier. But as you guys, if you guys are new to the channel and you aren't aware of what the purpose of this series is, eventually I want to have every single Zombies map, pretty much all of the Treyarch maps dating back to World at War, and have an entire playlist, a series of all of these maps saved on the channel. Whether an Easter egg is applicable, as I said, it's the requirement for these episodes, and have all of them to the end of a point. I will have the ultimate playlist where I can do my final sort of summary of the experience and rank each of the maps into their relevant sort of areas, and we will have this ultimate tier list where I think I can have anything and every video to back up all of my opinions, have all of the experiences available to anyone that wants to go view them, and of course for myself as a bit of an archive to give you guys a bit more of an understanding of what the purpose of this content is. Now, as for itself with Black Ops 7, as a game, it's honestly so underrated, or at least I'd say overhated perhaps. I'm a big fan, thoroughly enjoyed this map in itself, with Farm and Exit 115 survival maps also being really fun. I actually got to round 50 both times on each of those maps, with there of course being a free perkaholic up for grabs if you get to round 50 on each of these survival maps, so we cannot let that go to waste of course, and I can't wait to get into Astra Malorum in a couple of weeks time where we will share that journey with you guys in how we get the Easter egg done and the overall experience and the expectations of that map. Now the Infestation mask camo I just wanted to quickly touch on, I think is honestly a really cool camo, entertaining grind, and I have a separate video as I said on the channel which you guys should go check out in case you are interested. I just wanted to remind you guys because that was a huge part of me enjoying this game in itself with Black Ops 7, and like I said, a huge part of why I think this game is very underrated, because I still think Modern Zombies is really good. Black Ops 6 last year left me on a high. I thought it was a really sort of incredible experience with all of the maps, starting from basically from Terminus, even Citadel, Shattered Veil, and Reckoning. I think they were all incredible A-tier maps, and I think the Zombies series in itself is in good hands. I have briefly played Astra Malorum, but not enough, and what we're going to get in DLC 2 and so on and going forward, I think we have a really exciting future ahead of us for the rest of this season in terms of Black Ops 7. Now, for the map-specific details and the layout and the design, like I said, I think it plays differently almost every time you play this map. It has good high-round potential, but my only personal best was 56 before I exfilled, but I'm not really a high-round player, so I'm not entirely sure on how this map would play out past that point. I think I have seen quite a few high-round attempts, but like I said, I'm not a high-round player, so maybe you guys will let me know down below in case you guys are. But the Wonder Weapon on this map and Tessie are really cool. The Pack-a-Punch being on the Wonder Vehicle in itself makes it a lot easier, makes it far more efficient, of course, unless you forget to leave Tessie somewhere and you forget you have to go back for it, whatever it may be. However, I think it is a cool concept. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily the biggest fan of it either, though, if I'm being completely honest. Like, I'd like to steer away from having a Wonder Vehicle going forward. It just wasn't really for me, especially in the boss fight. I'm mainly talking about the boss fight element, to be honest, because I just feel like I wanted to use my actual setup, my loadout, my actual perks, but you really just relied on gobblegums and a vehicle and having at least an abundance of salvage available to you in case you guys go down or whatever it may be. But then Wonder Weapon in this map as well is really cool with the Necrofluid Gauntlet. I think that is a really cool weapon in itself, and I think that they've done a great job with the design elements of these maps and the weapons, and just with the vehicle, it does deserve its credit. I'm just saying my honest view is that I do not think it's something I want to see going forward, hopefully. But with regards to the Easter egg, this was definitely very challenging. I attempted it a total, including actually going for it, not just me doing the sort of camera grind as I said. Actually going for it, I did it on my third attempt. The first attempt I did it in threes. We got to the boss fight first time, although it took hours. I think it took over 4 hours for us to finally get there and eventually lose. In the second attempt, we ended up doing it again in threes, but we got basically not stuck, but almost bored and decided to just kind of not give up, but redo it another day. And then on the sort of third attempt, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do this on my own. I need to get this done. I want to get a video out. The game's been out for a couple of months now. I've done all the camos, so I've got no excuse to not get this Easter egg done. So I finally decided to just get around to doing it on solo, and that is pretty much what most of this gameplay is and that you've seen so far. Now, as for the Easter egg, you need to effectively open the map and activate the power pumps around the farm, Ashwood, and Blackwater Lake areas. You need to then obtain these 6 items whilst opening up the entire map. The first one is effectively the foot or the bones quest item, which can be found in the farm. By using a tomahawk, you can basically throw this at a zombie that's hanging in the farm. When it drops its foot, you can then use a Molotov to set fire to it, and you can collect those bones. As you move towards Ashwood, you can then open up the second area, the power pump, by doing the same step, clearing the infestation, and then turning on the power. Head towards the exit 115 area, aka the diner, to obtain the abomination carcass, which is effectively, you need to get a freezer key from killing a cook in that area, go over to the freezer, collect the carcass, and as well as being in this area, or of course in the farm, during a Ravager round, you need to use one of those traps in those areas to collect the Ravager eyes, which is needed later as a third quest item. As you are driving around the map, it's also worth looking out for the purple voids that you are going to need to shoot shortly. Once you head back to Ashwood, following obtaining the carcass, the abomination carcass in the freezer, you need to then upgrade Tessie in order to get the beam attack. Once you then drive around the map, you will find these purple voids. There are about 4 or 5 per game, and effectively once you shoot one of them, they will drop drop what is called the Horde Husk Chunks, and this is your fourth sort of quest item that you will need later on. One of the other steps and sort of parts you will need is at around 8, you will need to head back to Janus Towers Plaza and defeat the Uber Klaus elite enemy, and basically once you destroy this enemy, it will then spawn in a smaller one, just like in Reckoning. Kill that, obtain the stabilizer chip, and then effectively you need to activate Klaus, which you need to head back to Ashwood in the jail cell, which, as you can already tell, there's a lot of moving around in this map, so without Tessie, it's probably worth getting stamina up as a little bit of a tip. But anyways, head back to Ashwood, go into the jail cell, use the stuns that you're going to need at this point to throw them off the back wall, and then once you have freed Klaus, you can then control him, direct him using your L1, your tactical button on console, and then head to the Cosmodrome and go to the support systems room, which is down below, direct him to that little keypad that's on the wall, interact with this machine, which will then scan you with a red laser. You'll have to remain in that place for a short period of time, and then once complete, you are now able to pick up the ether barrel. Effectively, from here, you're going to be brought down to slow speed where you can't sprint, so use Tessie at this point, as you're not allowed to use the jump pads. Take this around the map to the 3 power pumps that you previously already cleared the infestation off of to open the power. Collect some souls at each of these with refined energy filling up this canister, and then once you complete each area, I would advise you want to go to Ashwood first, then go to Blackwater Lake, and then finish at the farm, as it's going to be relevant in a second. After you complete the step, head into the cellar below the barn or the house in farm, place this barrel into the mysterious looking box, and in order to unlock and open this box, you will need to obtain or find 3 symbols that are in the farm needed to unlock this box by using the jump pad either from the farm to Janus Towers or in reverse. And what you will see is on top of the 3 buildings, you will see these symbols in red. Input these corresponding symbols into that same box by interacting with it, and then also hit the interaction on the eye, the sort of little symbol at the back of the box after, which will then start a small tutorial on how to basically use the Necrofluid Gauntlet, the wonder weapon. Now that we have this wonder weapon, which is, like I said earlier in the video, controversial in my opinion, I still think this thing is great. It's just not as good as I think it could be or should be. I'm not the biggest fan. I think it's cool. It looks incredible, but it's not really practically the thing I would typically go for, and I'm not too fussed about it, and I did not even get to use it in the boss fight or anything like that either, so realistically it's not the best in my opinion. But anyways, from here, obtain the Wisp T perk, go to the tailor shop that's in Ashwood, go towards the mirror, and with this Wisp T perk, shoot and activate this perk on a zombie right in front of that mirror. It will then shoot, and then you need to then shoot the mirror with this same wonder weapon. When it reveals the image on there, collect the powder of the Forgotten, which is the little powder dust that drops after, which is your 4th quest item needed. Head over towards the Blackwater Lake to collect the jar of spores in the kitchen area, which is within the house or the cabin. You can obtain this at any point. You could have done it earlier when you do the pump as well, just a little bit of a speed up. Head back over to the farm, and outside there is a dead cow, which you can then place these spores, which would take 2 full rounds, and if you come back later, you can then collect the fungus that will be there. Now, during these 2 rounds, you can also then multitask other steps of your Easter eggs, like heading over to now Yuri's lab in the Cosmodrome and figuring out that cipher that is on the chalkboard after you interact with the chemistry set on the table. It's basically essentially easier to look up a detailed guide on this because I'm not going to show it on this, but essentially each of the quest items that you found around the map will sort of correspond to a letter on this board by being a piece of the puzzle almost, and the first letter of each of these 3 words that you see on the board need to then be interacted with in that same corresponding order. Don't know if that sounds confusing to you guys. It really isn't once you get your head around it, but effectively each of the first letters on the 3 words will represent a number, and that number represents a symbol that's on that table. You need to then just hold square on any of those 3 symbols out of the 6 items that you find as quest items. But seeing as we haven't got all of them yet, you may not be able to do this step until you get those final ones. So you may need to go get them by waiting 2 full rounds and then heading back to get that fungus at the farm. And then the final one is collecting from killing a Xersa bear, which spawns for the first time on the map at round 16. And here you need to defeat this Xersa using the Tessie's beam attack. So you can basically weaken it using your normal gun, go into the vehicle, and then use the beam attack to effectively eliminate this Xersa, which will drop the mysterious limb. Now that you have all the parts, you can head back to the lab, complete and add blood, start the trial, where you are now brought down to 75 health, which essentially you need to survive for 90 seconds, so stay sharp and play in corners. You will not be able to regenerate any health, so really do take this seriously and play smart. Maybe use gobble or whatever it may be, and also have your field upgrade available to you if you can. Once complete, your screen will fill up with purple gas, and you will now be freed. When you leave, each of the 4 main POIs will now have floating wisps areas around, which effectively are going to be the key POIs on the map, and you cannot begin these steps until you obtain 3 keys that are around the map, which will get you to the midpoint of the Easter egg. Now, using the wonder weapon, the first one is the yellow Bruin key, which can be found between Ashwood and the Cosmodrome, the in-between pathways in between these 2 areas, at either the satellite station, the fallen radio tower, or top of the cliffs by Ashwood. Once you see the little yellow glow, shoot it with the wonder weapon, retract it or recall the wonder weapon to effectively reload it. It will then bring the key, collect this, and when you pick this up, it will force you to run with only your melee weapon. So also, as a little bit of a tip, have Tessie available to you in hand, and then use this key on the small pyramid that now spawns and appears in the Ashwood behind the rabbit alley next to effectively the Juggernaut building. And then once you use this key on that pyramid, you are going to unleash or release one of the 3 chains. You need to then repeat this 2 more times by obtaining 2 more keys. So as you can see, there's a lot of detail here, guys. It's a very difficult Easter egg, and we're still not even at the halfway point. So really do rewind the video if you guys need some help. Again, this is not a full detailed guide. I'm just giving you a summary on the Easter egg. I like going over the details, and this is something I had to learn, but it's a part of the experience of this Easter egg. I just thought I would go over the extra details and little tips as well to make sure that this video is at least informative, as well as it being a bit of an overview of the map in itself. But as we go forward, the second key, aka the Nightbird key, which is arguably the hardest one to find, which can be found between exit 115 and Ashwood, which is located either behind the vehicle closest to exit 115, where you can see the reverse lights or the brake lights, in the T-Rex skull in the middle of this area, high up on the rocks, or behind the second T-Rex, which is lower on the floor closest to Ashwood. Again, it might be easier to watch a separate guide on where these locations are. I found it very difficult at first with not understanding some of these spots, so just a little bit of a tip there. Once you collect this key, your health will not regenerate, so bear this in mind and make sure you have Tessie available to you. Head back to the mini pyramid, use the key, and then the final one you need to get is the green key, which can be found in between Ashwood and the farm, in the grounded ship, either below the ship in itself, between the barrels, in the window on the side of the ship, or in the blue container at the very back of the ship. Now, when you pick this one up, you are not able to sprint and move very, very slowly, so also bear this in mind and have Tessie nearby. You also can't use jump pads as well, so don't even try that. Bring this back to the pyramid. It will then start the mid-game credits scene, where you have effectively got halfway through the Easter egg at this point, and you are now able to complete those 4 Wisp steps. Now, if you guys are efficient at this, it does not take long at all to get to this point, but if it's the first time you ever tried this Easter egg, it can take you a little bit of a while to get to this point, get all the quest items, and find these 3 keys. But honestly, and for being completely truthful, it does not take longer than maybe 40 minutes, and that you can probably do it way faster than that as well. Again, I'm not a speedrunner, I'm not a high round player. This is just me casually trying to play this map. I have only done it 3 times, but if you guys are competent at this map, you know what you're doing, it doesn't really take that long, so I don't want to bring it down and make it all negative like it takes a long time. There's just a lot of detail that you need to understand going into this, so please, if you're going to do this with your friends, make sure they at least know and understand that too, because it's going to make it a whole lot easier with you and your team. Now that you're at this point, you can start and continue on with those 4 Wisp steps, which are in those 4 main POIs. Now, in order to start each one, you need to shoot the clock tower using the newly obtained DG2 turret barrel that you find in place of that pyramid. And once Tessie is upgraded, simply place the vehicle on the slopes heading down towards the garage from either of the sides and look up at the clock tower whilst in this turret. Shoot the turret, which then turns and stops the clock from moving. You are then able to use your wonder weapon to shoot this clock throughout the rest of these steps on each of the 4 faces to then gain the purple ethereal effect on your weapon. This is then needed and required to start each of the 4 Wisp steps, so make sure you understand how to do this going forward, because you're going to have to repeat this quite a few times to finish this Easter egg. Now, the first Wisp step that I would recommend to do is the Cosmodrome area. Using the new, now purple wonder weapon, head over and shoot each of the 2 satellites next to the Wisp T perk machine and comms room area to slow them down from spinning. You'll then need to obtain 2 charges for this step from the actual clock tower itself. Inside, there are going to be 2 computers on the right hand side, which showing 6 images, so 3 each, which then deciphers a word, which in turn, using the 6 computers on the left hand side, which are all showing different numbers that flash between each one, you need to then shoot the little red button on each of those screens when you see the numbers that you want to stop them from changing. You are effectively trying to spell out a word that you've deciphered on the right hand side, and once you match the corresponding word, you will then activate the launch sequence for the rocket, and you will have completed this step. Now, to remind you guys, in case you've forgotten or if it's your first time, when you see the screens on the left, 0 represents A, 1 represents B, and so on. You're working your way through the alphabet, and when you effectively spell your word, that is how you then sort of basically start the launch step for the rocket, and you can move on to the second step, which in my opinion, I would recommend doing the diner or the exit 115 step, which needs to be on an even round. So if it's not even, move on to the third step, which we'll go over in a second. But if it's on an even round, you can then go over to the exit 115. During lightning strikes, you will basically be able to shoot the clock above the mechanics station with a purple ethereal shot to basically start a 1 minute timer. But before you do this, it's really important to understand what you actually need to do. There are effectively 3 lightning strikes: blue, yellow, and red. Each one has a corresponding zombie next to them. You'll need to lure them into these 3 lightning strikes. The blue one, effectively inside the diner, there is basically a cashier or a cash register where you'll need to melee. The waitress that is then sitting next to that will then basically come to life. You will then need to lure her up onto the roof to the blue lightning strike, and that step will be done. But remember, you are timed during this, so try and be quick. The red lightning strike will involve you having to situate and position the Tessie Wonder vehicle next to and shoot with the beam attack on the red truck that is next to the diner. The trucker zombie will then spawn and wake up. You'll then need to do the same thing, lure him onto the roof above the station, and then walk him into the red lightning strike. The final one is the yellow one. Reminding you are timed, so if you do fail this, it's not the end of the world. If you fail, go to the end of the next round and wait until you get to another even round and come back later. If you need to, you can go and multitask one of the other steps as well for the Wisp T. Once you've done this, you need to basically call in Klaus on the yellow lightning strike, then place him next to the mechanic station, and inside he will effectively wake up the mechanic. The mechanic will then spawn in, you can lure him onto the roof, and once all 3 lightning strikes are complete and basically have a zombie frozen next to them and the timer then finishes, you will have completed this step, where you can then go and do the third one, which will need to be the farm, as the 4th Wisp step has to be the Blackwater Lake as the final step, and I'll explain that in a minute why. But for the farm, this is, I would say, probably the hardest one, or at least most difficult. It's not difficult in itself, but I'm just saying it's probably the hardest, purely because I found, at least on solo, you definitely have to be set up and have the right equipment and preparation in place, because it can be quite difficult towards the end. But with a charged shot, head into the house and look at the clock above the dinner table in the farm area, which will then show a time. Effectively, you need to stand around the table corresponding to that time, because on the floor you will see a Roman numeral that will basically say 3, 6, 9, or 12. Stand on whichever one represents the same as the clock that it's frozen. Look at the zombie at the head of the table. It will then turn its head and look at you. When its eyes light up, you can shoot this with the purple ethereal shot. You can then need to obtain 4 items around the actual farm itself, with the teddy bear being in the house upstairs in the bunk bed, the face mask being on the 2nd floor of the barn. The 3rd item is the chalice, which is next to the bath in the cellar, and the 4th is the sort of sticker, the pig sticker, which is in the garage on the table. There is now 4 symbols going to be around the farm on the floor. Place each of these 4 items on the 4 symbols, and then activate each of these 4 items. Once activated, it will start a survival defense step, where you will need to effectively stop zombies from damaging and affecting these 4 items, which in solo, like I said, for an entire minute, it can be really difficult. So use things like Frenzied Guard to distract all of the zombies, use things like Monkey Bombs and maybe Casimir's, and almost, I guess, hope for the best, because it can be quite difficult, so just bear that in mind. Also, you can use Gobblegums. Insta-kill is really useful, Temporal Gift as well to help extend the duration, whatever it may be. But all of these things can help you. It doesn't take long, it's not hard, I'm just saying it was probably, in my opinion, especially on solo, the more difficult one to do. Your screen will flash white, and you can now head over towards the Blackwater Lake to complete the 4th and final step, which requires you to interact with the Wisps on the dock, and then from there, with a purple charged shot, go into the cinema room and hit the projector, which will then show 4 images of the Blackwater cabin in an order, which you then need to shoot those 4 film reels which are around the house in the same corresponding order. One is on the top of the cabin on a shelf, which represents the front of the cabin. One is in the boathouse on the rafters or in the roof on the right hand side, if you're looking at it. One is in the tool shed at the back on the shelf, and then the last one is under the stairs of the southeast side of the cabin, basically opposite the M181 sort of wall by on the side. And then once you shoot these in the same order, it will flash purple and disappear. If incorrect, there will be a little bit of a jump scare where you'll need to go to the next round and start again. Once complete, you simply call in Klaus, head up to the bedroom where there is this little sort of mysterious box, direct him to that box, it will open up, he can collect the whistle that's inside it. Just have your gobblegums available to you, make sure you've got like a field upgrade, a bit of money for some ammo, and of course salvage to repair the vehicle. And reminder, throughout all of the steps as well, the clock tower and Tessie in between of the 4 Wisp steps, make sure you shoot that clock tower over and over again. Just a little bit of a reminder, because I kept forgetting it on the first time I tried it. But once you're ready, you got all your Gobblegums, you can go and interact with Klaus and start the final Wisp sort of step in itself, where you have to sit in Tessie, wait around 20 seconds, because what you need to do is allow enough Wisps to spawn on the map, effectively drive down towards the Janice Towers Plaza from the lake, head through that little sort of background bit in the forest, head into Janice Towers Plaza, head towards the farm, go up towards the farm, head down towards Ashwood, where you go through the ship, and then head back on yourself through towards the Blackwater Lake. And as you do all of this, you will see sort of wisps around the map. Drive through all of these with the vehicle, and as you head through the final one on towards the lake from Ashwood, you will then head into the boss fight, which is split up into 3 phases. Now, this is not your ordinary boss. I was saying it at the earlier of the video, it's quite controversial on how I feel about this boss, purely because it's a really cool experience, it's unique, it's not something I've done before, but I personally would just rather actually use my weapons and not have to do this wonder weapons, the wonder vehicle stuff, whereas I found this just a bit tedious. It takes a while, and I did actually realize after a while during this boss fight on both the 3s and when I was playing on my own in solo, that I was doing a lot of it wrong, and I'll explain that in a second as to what I was doing. So the first phase, you effectively just drive around and hit him using the vehicle in the beam and boost attack. Try and hit those red spots to deal critical damage if you can. The second phase, he will become immune from normal damage. You need to effectively wait for lightning to spawn. You can actually speed this up later by using the turret if you're on solo, but it is risky. Once you hit him, you can then jump out, shoot the yellow spot beneath him to deal any extra damage, and then in the third and final phase, he will then do a charge up attack, a big powerful purple bluey beam that will then charge up. You need to boost into the boss to deal damage during this and prevent him from unleashing this attack, which is devastating, and this needs to be done quite fast and repetitively until his health is brought down nearly or fully depleted, and repeat this over and over again and you'll have completed the Ashes of the Damned Easter egg. In summary, I would say this map definitely deserves its flowers. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience of playing it, grinding the master camo, and learning and completing this Easter egg, and defeating this boss itself, especially on solo, which was both challenging and rewarding. But with that said, hopefully you've enjoyed this video, found this useful, and of course learned something new about this, with it also being inspiring for you guys to try out for yourselves, whether you're on solo or with your team. But with that said, that's the video in itself. As always, if you've enjoyed, do not forget to like and subscribe. It massively helps me out. I am a small creator, as you can see. If you have any comments, tips or tricks about playing zombies in general, or of course on this map, or any suggestions about future videos, let me know guys down below, and I will get right back to you. I'm Vision SGen, and I'll see you in the next one.